Today I'm going to practice the movement of fabric. Hello fellow painters, welcome back. This is my process for my oil painting series. I'm studying drapery and fabric movement and the way they work basically, so that I can get a better understanding on how to apply it to my own subjects that I'm going to be painting for those multiple paintings. On the screen, you can see that I've already started sketching with a pen, the 1-point tension drapery and the 2-point tension drapery, and I decided to redo it. More than anything, it's a bit of a hassle to do the 2-point drapery. I want to really understand how things fold and kind of fall on top of each other or stack on top of each other because of gravity and because of the fabric itself, the potential weight it has. And then I move on to a sort of hanging type of drapery. And I move on to one that is stacked on some sort of like fake wall square thing, and it's wrapped around it. So I'm starting to learn little by little the potential vast array of opportunity that I can have with my own painting. Trying to understand the different folds that can happen with each one, with each type of fold, with each type of wrapping. And in here, I'm doing a drapery over a person. It did not go well, so I tried again. I tried to be lighter with the pen, not put so much pressure there, so that afterwards, if you really mess up, you can at least accentuate with harsher lines the good parts of them. It also looks better. Once you start really doing harsh lines with a pen or even a pencil, it starts to look the best way I can describe it right now is amateurish. And then I found this other reference on Pinterest, which by the way I didn't mention, but most of my references here were from Pinterest. And this one I really loved. It was this woman that was sitting on this chair throne thing that was fully enveloped and covered with all of this fabric and drapery, and it was very intricate. And I was trying to figure out how to do it with the pen and figure out ways to simplify it. And then I started to get closer to, with this current sketch, I started to get closer to some type of fabric that was close to what my subject was going to look like in my paintings. So she was enveloped in a very light type of fabric, see-through. So because it was see-through, it was difficult at first, to simplify the folds that were happening, since you could see through behind the other folds. Where in the other types of fabric, it is opaque, so you just see the main fold, you don't see what's behind it or in front of it. So I practically focused on what was on top and maybe a couple that were behind. And here I'm starting with another reference that was very, very interesting. So just crossing her arm across her chest, and the cloth is in tension because of the way that she's grabbing it, and there's all of this smooth tensed up surface around the middle, and all of the wrinkles and folds are on those edges, let's say, on all of those tension points, which is on the elbow area, on the twisting part around her head, and the knuckles. So those are little things that I'm looking for. Where are the tension points? How would I apply that to my own paintings? So these are my observations and what I'm trying to keep in mind. Like, for example, when there's more tension and more wrapping, there's more folds. When there's tension, like a large surface area, and there's different, like just as I described, there's like a triangle situation happening where she's grabbing it. When it's twisting, the center area, which is very tense, is going to be smooth, not flat, but smooth. I redid a 1 point tension with a pencil, and I started to, and this is I think a portion of, if I'm not exactly sure what reference I grabbed here, I'll try to find it and I'll pop it on the screen if I can. The whole point of this now was to start including values and try to figure out more the volume of how the folds work, trying to connect each fold as well. And here I'm trying to do the line, do a stripe across, like a tablecloth. I'm trying to do like a pattern with the stripe, and I learned that, the stripe is the same distance from the edge in every fold. Generally speaking, it should look like it's the same distance. And I did it wrong at first because I was just following the first stripe and following the movement of the cloth without considering the height of where the cloth is at. And I moved on now to a different type of folding, which is a more flowy situation. And this was from the book drawing reference. And this is a lot closer to what my work would be depicting. Very flowy type of folding and drapery and cloth. Tried to shade that in, considering that the light would be coming from the top. Now I'm moving on to a different one, also from that book, which I'll pop on the screen as well if I haven't done already. And again, just trying to shade in important parts, making the specific areas I want to focus on stand out the most, shading them more, adding stronger lines. And here I was losing a little bit the entire thread of what I was doing. So this is supposed to be drapery over a ball. It wasn't the worst, it wasn't the best, but this is the whole surface area type of tension, where around the perimeter or edge where the ball is finally, let's say, where the drapery is finally falling from the ball instead of lying on it, that's when all of the folds and creases start to form. So it's a very circular type of pattern that the folds show. Excuse me. And here I tried to do a similar thing, but someone pulling the drapery off from the ball. And after all that warm up with the pencil and the shading, understanding the volume a little bit better and how they connect, I started to paint. It is a different day, but I started to feel a bit more confident with the type of folds that I was seeing in the references. And this time I wanted to really take care of the process. I wanted to be patient, be slow, and more productive with the initial sketch. I've been noticing that I've been trying to rush it and trying to be loose, but at the same time I was being careless. And this time I wanted to take my time, not worry about how long something is taking me. So I grabbed some paint thinner. I have this small board canvas thing, and just grabbed some blue with Van Dyck Brown and started laying in the main shapes, the main folds, and shading in the backgrounds because this was a dark reference. Well, this woman was in the middle of a forest in the snow with the drapery on her. So you see a lot of bare trees in the background. And in terms of mood, I wanted to include that in at least one of the paintings, if not all. But my idea for my series is to use a combination of the dark visuals with the toxic colors, if you will. But looking back at this now, I'm thinking it might be a good idea to go into the basics of dark. But I need to ruminate more on that idea. So again, I'm focusing on the main folds that are creating all of the movement, or at least the main movements of each area. Say the tension that is created from her lifting the arms to the floor, and the ones that are being created by her head, which are creating that triangular shape. And within that triangular shape, I want to include the general folds that are happening. And there weren't too many intricate small ones except for the arm because there's too much fabric there. And I just wanted to simplify it. It is a very small canvas surface, so I didn't want to waste time in trying to figure out the detail of each little fold that exists in the reference. I don't care about that. That was not my goal. My goal was to understand the general main folds that happen and simplify it. In the future, if I want to create more folds and I start to understand how they work a little bit better by doing these sorts of studies, then I'll be able to include them. So I'm working a little bit more now within the values of the shadow areas. And slowly but surely getting to covering the whole little canvas. Taking my time. I moved on from the paint thinner to just using paint straight out of the tube type of consistency. So it was getting a little bit harder at some point, but if you see here, like every stroke is a little bit difficult and not very smooth to apply on the bare canvas, so I started to add just a little bit of paint thinner until the whole thing was covered. And then with the white paint with the blue combination that I had, I wasn't using the paint thinner because now there's no need. The canvas is covered, so the surface is going to be wet, so the paint is going to move smoother on top of the underlying paint. And I grabbed a few different references to practice, both in mood, lighting, color, type of drapery, things that vary and that can make me... It was basically a way to challenge myself in each little study, something that I would have never picked before. And because I'm trying to slow down in my process, I chose things that were more difficult and more visually complex. So this is the, let's say, level 1. Technically pretty simple. You have the two, you can focus on this like just the two-fold, the two tension points that I was doing earlier, from the arm to the head. That's one type of drapery. You have the middle of the head, which is the 1-point tension, well, technically the surface tension, but if you can simplify it to the 1-point tension, it becomes pretty easy in that sense. And then add those little details that create the surface tension a bit more obvious. And then again, you have the other arm, which is creating a different version of the 2-point tension. So once you start to simplify it in that way and understand those general shapes, it becomes easier to then break it down even more and focus on those other folds within the big fold, which is just a bit of a value change, whether it's a little bit darker or a little bit lighter, whether there's a bit of reflection from the snow like light reflection from the snow, etc. The one thing that was harder for me in this little study was that the head was tilted and the chest was actually visually present, in the sense that the drapery was cascading from the chest as well. So there was a very little subtle change on the area of the chest. There was a bit more light on top, which I tried to do now, and it sort of works, but not really, not in the same manner. So that is something I still want to practice. I'm not entirely sure, but I figured the way I could start it next time is just overall on that area, on the top of the chest, create a lighter value, and on the bottom of the chest, when it starts cascading, or from the head to the chest, make those areas a little bit darker. And then include more detail of light and shadow of the fold itself. So work with slightly bigger shapes on those more intricate areas so I can eventually get to them. And here we go with the second reference that I chose. This was a very intimidating image or reference because the light was coming from behind. So that means all the values in a way were reversed. I don't exactly know how to describe it. If not reversed, everything seemed to trick me visually, where the background is very light, but the fabric that is being lit from behind is lighter than the background. And the main silhouette portion of her body is in dark. So I tried to figure out a way to lay those things down first, the darks of her, so that then the fabric around her does feel like it's on her and is in movement. I think she might be like turning with her arms open like that, or may have like a big gust of wind type of fan on her. I don't know. That's what I imagined. And so I'm trying to generally lay down those darks of the body, of the fabric. The fabric folds do get pretty dark, but where they get very together, where the fabric becomes very clumped up, those shadows, for whatever reason, are not that dark. Because the fabric is white and it's not fully against the light. It's being more... How would I describe that? It's more opaque, so it takes the color of the fabric more. I think that's how I can describe it. I'm not 100% sure. And it was pretty tricky because this type of fabric is very thin, it gets very wrinkly, and I just left it as how it was. And then I decided to just move on to this third reference. And the reason for that is the goal of the other one was achieved. I got the lighting, I got some of the main folds, I got an eerie, ethereal type of look to it, and I just left it. There was also too much detail to get into that I did not want to waste time on, because that was not my goal again. And here on this third sketch that I started with, I started to get a little bit impatient, I will admit, and this time it's a bigger canvas board. So I started with a more like gestural drawing type of sketch, and I got some of the proportions wrong of the body, and I tried to fix it on the sketch part. And here is the perfect reference for me, in the sense of really trying to simplify because there's a lot more fabric than in the previous two. And you have the surface area tension point of the arm that is also wrapping around her chest and her leg, and then it just flows into the air because of the dance or whatever movement she's doing. So I'm focusing on the big shapes of the shadows, getting a little bit more detailed once I have those, but not too much. I just want to understand the general movement that the fabric is having, I repeat. So I'm also focusing on the lights. I wanted to make it feel like you could see through the fabric of the arm in certain areas. And here I wish I would have left it just as is, but I kept adding more white around her chest. And it did not become too see-through, but at least on the arm, it was a little bit. Small, subtle changes of value and color. And this was it. So I would say I was able to achieve the goal that I had set for myself that day. I was able to simplify the fabric, focus on the movement and the big shapes that they could have in my paintings. I can take now some of those things that I have practiced into my future paintings in the series. So as I keep learning, if you would like to know what else I do and when I get to my paintings, feel free to let me know that you like this content or series process journey. And don't forget to subscribe if you would eventually like to see the rest of the journey and the rest of the paintings. Thank you so much for sticking by if you have, and I'll see you in the next one. Happy painting!